So M. Night Shyamalan's new movie, Knock at the Cabin, or as my mum likes to keep calling it, Cabin in the Woods, is actually a pretty good film, I think. It holds a high level of intensity through its thriller story, and at its center, it has a moral dilemma which keeps you guessing as to what the hell the right thing to do is. And that kind of thing always interests me, and so basically I will say this movie had a lot going for it, and I had pretty high expectations going in. But by the end, despite all that, I actually found myself feeling really hollow about this film, and I really just didn't give a shit about anything in the end. So I'm here to explain why, with full spoilers ahead. So as we all know, going into the film, the initial premise of this is that a family made up of two fathers and their adoptive daughter are prompted with an impossible decision by four mysterious intruders who invade their home and explain that they have to sacrifice, as in kill, one of their fellow family members in order to supposedly avert an impending apocalypse. And whether or not you believe these people, whether or not they're right or wrong, is something that definitely comes into question. Like, you can't just take their word for it, right? That would be immoral and stupid. You're not going to provide that request. Obviously, you're not going to listen to these people. You're not going to kill your own family just because these bozos tell you that you have to. Obviously, you need some sort of proof. And from here, the film ingeniously slivers in little pieces of hints that prove that maybe they know what they're talking about, you know? Or these things can be construed as wild coincidences. And that's kind of the genius of the film, as it kind of contrasts the very small, stale stakes that take place within this cabin compared to the grandiose threats being made by these icons of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And I really love that premise. I think it's really awesome, to be honest, and 90% of this movie is actually really good. I just hate what they ended up deciding to do with this premise by the end. So much so that I think that this became the stupidest version of what this movie is that it possibly could have been. It really dumbed itself down, and I found myself being really disappointed by that. But let me explain how I think it could have been better. So basically, they're prompted with that impossible question, right? And so I think it's really interesting, though, that the intruders are coming into this from a genuine place of good intent. They actually think that they're going to help the world. They think of themselves as the hero of this story, martyrs who are saving the world and stopping the apocalypse. And I find that really interesting, that essentially the villains kind of also think that they're the good guys. I think that that is ingenious. But the unfortunate thing about the film is that they don't quite follow through with this idea. So what I would have wanted from the film is that the fathers of the family started to actually buy in to this murderous suicide cult and their story. Basically, I wanted the fathers to get so convinced by their explanation that they actually do decide to, you know, kill one of the fathers. I wanted that to be the case. But with the signature Shyamalan twist, I really wanted it to turn out that after they make that sacrifice, it turns out that the intruders are just wrong and that they do this sacrifice for absolutely nothing. It amounts to nothing, and it's just this tragedy for no fucking reason. The emphasis being how easily you can lose yourself when it comes to misinformation. You know, the fathers would be listening to these people and finally get so convinced in the echo chamber or whatever the hell you want to call it, and there they find themselves losing pieces of themselves. I think there's actually a really clever metaphor in there somewhere that maybe I'm not fully explaining, but that I think could have run strong if Shyamalan committed to that thing. Obviously, he didn't though. He wanted to do something else. And that's okay. I don't mind doing something else. I don't mind that. I mean, all in all, it's not that different. It's still the same premise. They still make one of the sacrifices. I just wish there was no actual supernatural things going on. I just wish there was no doomsday or anything like that they were stopping. They just happened to be wrong, and that everything was just a wild coincidence when it comes to the natural disasters and everything else taking place. But the one thing that really bothered me more than anything else, because that's just wishful thinking, that's just what I wanted from the film, but if I'm judging it as what it was, the thing that disappointed me about Knock at the Cabin is that it didn't leave things up for interpretation. It just definitively answers the questions for you. Anything that you may be wondering, boom, it's right there on the screen. Shyamalan shows you everything. He shows you that the natural disasters stop after they kill Eric, and it really just brings everything to a very simplistic form of what the story could have been. I don't need or want all of the answers spouted out at me. I don't need to be spoon-fed like that. I'm not a child, and I think he should have left it for the adults to interpret interpret, because, you know, this is meant to be a film, it's meant to be an art piece, it's meant to be saying something, and I would have been much more interested in an ambiguous ending, leaving me wondering if they made the right decision. Because as it is, they just tell you that it was the right decision, and now if I go back and rewatch it, I'm just gonna be like, well, fucking kill Eric now at the very start, and you can avoid all these other people getting killed, you know, as the murderous cult happens to be right. I am just kind of bothered by that idea, because it makes it so that the villains themselves are a lot more simplistic. They are exactly who they say they are, and also there's no surprise. And I'm not just saying that because Shyamalan is known for twists, okay? You know, obviously he's kind of the right man for the job when it comes to twists, and if it turned out that they were wrong and it was all for nothing, I mean, that's very on brand with Shyamalan. But that's not exactly what I'm saying. More so what I'm saying is there's no surprise in the way that as soon as you're given the premise, as soon as you find out what it's about, there's nothing really more to learn. That is just what the film is. It's beat for beat exactly what you think it's going to be. It's utterly predictable. It's painful to watch because of that. It's the most boring version of the movie that it could have been. And I don't really appreciate getting the definitive answers. I think that's just, I don't know. I think that's a boring way to go about it. And that's just my personal opinion. And I think that I'm actually going to be in the minority there because, you know, worldwide ramifications, end of the world stuff, that seems to be what's popular in media a lot of the time. I'm much more interested in the personal, low stakes kind of thing. Everything that took place in that cabin was much more interesting to me than anything else that would have taken place outside of it. I think it's 90% of a good movie. I just kind of hate what they did with it in the end. But that's what I think. Let me know what you think and all that stuff. But before I go, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that shit. And I'm out. Goodbye.